Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Monday, January 15th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Akron game is in 229 days. The game against Michigan in 320 days. The Cotton Bowl game against Missouri, that was just over 2.5 weeks ago. But boy, does that feel like a long time ago, I think right now for Ohio State fans. It was one of the darker, more down times for Ohio State football in recent memory. And then here we are, not even technically halfway through the month of January, and life is very different. The future is looking very different and much better in Columbus, Ohio than it did just back then. Kevin Noon of Buckeye Huddle joins me today to talk about that. He posted a thread on our Huddle board and was basically asking just how differently people are viewing things now than they were in the wake of the Cotton Bowl. And Kevin, it is safe to say things have changed quite a bit over the last 2.5 weeks.
They have, and the response there has been very positive. I mean, there's some people who are like, well, I didn't get too caught up in the Cotton Bowl. Well, it doesn't matter because a lot of things were trending poorly at that point, just in addition to Ohio State's milquetoast efforts, at least offensively on offense in that Cotton Bowl game. Ohio State was watching its biggest rival, getting ready to play in the national semifinals, unbeknownst to everybody that they would go on and win the whole darn thing. There could have been mass exodus from the program just because of bad feelings and everything else of just how things kind of ended up, on a 3-year losing jag against the team up north, a 3-year losing jag of not getting to the Big Ten championship game, being out of the college football playoff for the last couple of years. And we sit here today with almost everybody returning in the class, some shiny new transfer portal players. Recruiting for 25 is looking great. A refreshed coaching roster that is still in flux at this point. There are a lot. I mean, it's just polar opposites in a lot of ways, and a lot of people said, yeah, I was ready to drink, arsenic on the 29th, and right now I'm ready to drink, Cristal. It's like, all right, well, maybe we shouldn't get that excited yet. There's still a long ways to go, but it's a significant change.
Yeah, it's probably better to save the champagne until after the wins are actually on the record book. But things are certainly trending a whole heck of a lot better than they were a few weeks ago, and I think a lot that starts with the guys coming back who could have gone to the NFL draft. Back in December, I think after the Michigan game, Tony Gerderman and I went through and looked and thought, you could have 5 guys, 6 guys sitting out the Cotton Bowl, and you only had one, and that was Marvin Harrison, and he was sort of the only one who you knew for sure was not coming back. Mike Hall there was certainly a lot of smoke around Mike Hall not coming back. He didn't come back. But then they batted 1,000 on everyone else. You get back both your defensive ends. You get back Tyleik Williams. You get back you've got your whole corner unit back together. Lathan Ransom is back. Donovan Jackson is back. Emeka Ibuka is back. Travion Henderson's back. I mean, that could be, not quite half of the all Big Ten first team next year, and they're all coming back. And that is, I think that is certainly a little bit unusual based on how things have typically gone for Ohio State. Some of that may be reflective of a combination of NIL changing some of the calculus on, do I have to go to the draft or do I not? But also sort of the unfinished business. That's something that Denzel Burke talked about, that Jack Sawyer talked about while we were at the Cotton Bowl. I think all of that plays in, and to get all of those guys back, that's like bringing in the greatest transfer portal class in history.
Yeah, we all champion when Ohio State brings in a transfer, and you just don't know necessarily how it's going to work out. I mean, new system, blah, 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 blah. And sometimes the NFL returnee is undersold because, I know what he's capable of, but he's somebody who knows how to warm up and go through the practice, and is obviously, if he has an NFL decision, he hasn't been terrible. I mean, it's not a case of, this guy who has appeared one snap in 4 years is looking at his NFL decision, and not unless he's looking to sell tickets there. He's not going to be getting that NFL opportunity. So Yeah, it's huge for Ohio State, and I think it's really important to have a veteran-laden team this year more than any, as it being the first year of the 18-team Big Ten, the first year of the 12-team playoff. You want to have these older bodies who have kind of been there and seen that, and while they haven't necessarily seen Washington, Oregon, USC, UCLA, they haven't seen multiple rounds of the playoffs. They're further along physically, they're further along developmentally to be able to handle the rigors of what could be a much longer season, what could be a very different season. Dare I say 10-2 wins the Big Ten? I don't know. I'm not ready to pick 2 losses against Ohio State, but I'm also going to play the odds there and say that we can count the number of 12-0 Ohio State teams on a pretty short list. So it's big. It's really big.
Yeah, it is. It is really big, and also really big. Some of the additions they've brought in through the transfer portal. Only 3 names so far this offseason. So far, could be more. We're keeping an eye on some potential names from Alabama this month, and of course, the portal will open up again after spring. The Buckeyes brought in Josh Simmons, for example, after spring ball last year, and he was a very, very impactful player for them. But the 3 guys they've brought in have all answered, I think, some pretty significant questions. All 3 guys coming in from Power 5 programs: quarterback Will Howard, running back Quinshon Judkins, center Seth McLaughlin. None of them are absolute lead pipe locks to be a Heisman finalist or anything, but all 3 of them also do have a pretty solid track record of playing at a pretty high level of the sport, and certainly are all, at the very least, an opportunity to sort of raise the floor of what this Ohio State team could be, because you had the uncertainty at the center position with Carson Hinsman in December, the uncertainty with the running back position in terms of a huge exodus from that room last year, and then the quarterback position with Kyle McCord leaving. All 3 of those guys sort of, they are at the very least good solid patches in, over the holes in the drywall there.
There are 4 transfers, sir. You are banned from ever going back down to Athens. They also got the tight end out of Ohio University.
That's right. I forgot. You know what? Someone said 3 transfers. Yes, Kazmarek, the tight end from Ohio University, who also fills that hole where they did not have great blocking at the tight end position last year. So, sorry. I will have to go to the.
You have to do some Jackie O's Hail Marys or something.
Yeah, pay my respects at the Bagel Street Deli the next time I'm down in Athens. Very sorry.
I love Bagel Street Deli. But getting back to the show itself, yeah, these are big gets, because this is not just filling up your coffers just to fill up your coffers. Ohio State obviously comes into the 24th season with a quarterback question. The departure of Kyle McCord. Devin Brown gets hurt during the Cotton Bowl. Lincoln Keenholz thrown into an untenable situation at that point. Now you bring in Will Howard, somebody who has played a lot of college football. A lot of people want to port his numbers over from Kansas State and say, wow, this isn't going to work out. Well, let's just say this, to be honest. He's not been necessarily throwing it to Emeka Egbuka and Carnell Tate and Brandon Ennis and Jeremiah Smith and so on and so forth. So, that's there. Quinshon Judkins gives Ohio State really arguably the best 1-2 punch. And people are going to yell at me. It's like, what about Dallin Hayden? Well, we're talking about a 1-2 punch. We'll get into a third one, then Dallin Hayden's in the mix. But with him and Trey Henderson, I think that this is something that Ohio State has not had for quite some time. I think we talked about it on another show about the last time Ohio State had such an AB type of tandem at the running back position, and we're going back a pretty decent amount to get there. And then obviously with offensive lineman Seth McLaughlin, that's a huge get. I mean, if I had a nickel for every time that I had to say offensive line on any Ohio State podcast that I've been on, I could probably retire, because it was very much a front and center issue. Now, of course, the problem with McLaughlin is he a center? Is he a guard? Everybody's last memory of him as a center in the Rose Bowl, not the best one, but you have a whole offseason to kind of work through these things. And if you golf with any regularity, I'm pretty sure you have had a moment in your golfing career where you've had the yips. It just happens. It just is what it is. I'm in a 20-year period of still having the yips. Just not a good golfer. So I think that this is very big for Ohio State. And while we are seeing programs like Texas and Florida State doing a really good job in the portal as well, I think for Ohio State, which had been very selective in previous years and has just started to open up a little bit more over the last couple, I think that this is a proof of concept, because you know what all of this takes? Bringing all the NFL guys back, going out and getting to the portal. Money. And it seems like Ohio State and its NIL collectives are all finally pointed in the same direction.
It feels like there's a little bit of a sense of purpose and a little bit of a sense of direction, like you said there, where you're not necessarily splashing the pot for the true freshmen, which has not really worked out great for the programs that have done that, the Texas A&Ms and the Miamis of the world. You bring back some of the veteran guys. That's what Michigan did last year. They did a very purposeful NIL push to bring back those veteran guys for a fourth year, and you see where that got them. Ohio State sort of following that model now, so we'll see where it gets them. One other big change that has been, I think, very welcomed by the Ohio State fan base, especially in one case, some coaching staff changes. That coaching staff overhaul still a little bit in the works right now. Perry Eliano, Parker Fleming out as of the moment we're recording this, Matt Guerrieri in. So those are the changes right now. James Laurinaitis is sort of temporarily the 10th coach. So he's on the road right now doing some recruiting stuff, but he may or may not remain the 10th coach, depending on what they do at some of the other spots. But there's also potentially a play caller coming in. Ryan Day reportedly looking for an offensive coordinator. I think some of these changes are more necessary than others, but I think that a lot of these are potentially, handing over the play calling just has felt like something that probably needed to happen and something that might make a big difference in those really tight late game situations. So it feels like maybe now Ryan Day, with his back against the wall a little bit after that Cotton Bowl, making some of those decisions that, I think have maybe been in the works for a little bit of time.
I mean, it certainly had to be an uneasy feeling sitting 4 feet away from Eli Drinkowitz on the dais and him going on and on about all of the virtues of finally checking his ego and giving up play calling and how successful and wild and wonderful it was. And Ryan Day is sitting there looking like he wanted to be kind of anywhere other than on that dais. But I think that these coaching changes are important. You want to make sure that you keep your staff fresh. And I think one of the things that we saw toward the end of the Mark D'Antonio era at Michigan State is he wouldn't make coaching changes. He would reshuffle the deck chairs, but he wouldn't bring in any new coaches. And I do think that there's a level of staleness that comes out of that. So Ohio State kind of going outside the family, inside the family, with the replacement for Perry Eliano, that's inside the family. He comes over from Oklahoma State with Jim Knowles, had experience at Duke as well, or maybe he was just at Duke all along. It all kind of runs together, but that's somebody that can work with Jim Knowles that has that experience. But I think then with an OC, you look at Ohio State going outside the family a little bit more. We still don't know a name as of the time we're recording here, but then if you give that guy some hiring, firing power or whatever, then you maybe diversify the staff even a little bit more. And I think it keeps everybody hungry and everybody moving in the right direction. Because the one thing I'll say about Urban was you never knew what was coming around the corner. And it seems like with Ryan Day, he doesn't create as hostile as a work environment as Urban did.
Yeah, Urban never wanted anyone to be comfortable. And comfortable is not necessarily a bad thing, but it can be, comfort can sometimes breed complacency, and some big shakeups going on inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center this offseason. And it got me thinking back to other times when Ohio State has ended the season with something of a thud or sort of been in a little bit of a down cycle, and things that have just sort of changed the mood around the fan base in a way that the last couple of weeks have. The first one that jumped out to me was the hiring of Urban Meyer after they were 6-6. They just lost to Michigan in 2011 for the first time in 8 years. And then by the next, what was it, Monday night, I think, Urban Meyer standing at a podium at Ohio State. And you might as well, the 2011 season no longer existed in the minds of Ohio State fans. Everyone was just thinking about 2012 at that point. The other one was Jim Tressel, his first season, coming in, looking just kind of okay. They were 6-4 going into the Michigan game, and then they win the Michigan game in Ann Arbor. First time in Ann Arbor since 1987 at that point. That had not happened in 14 years. And that was another one. Boy, that changed everything around the atmosphere and the expectation around the Ohio State football program. This Kevin, to me, is this is not quite Urban Meyer level, I don't think, but this has been a pretty dramatic swing in the last few weeks.
And we will, when we have the gift of hindsight, when we're a year down the line, 2 years down the line, and we see what the 24 season ended up being, I think we'll really determine where this ranks, because we're dealing with only half of the equation. But yeah, I mean, I certainly remember both of those instances that you'd mentioned, the 11 season, which is no longer canon in Ohio State's collective memory, and going into 12. I mean, I was back on the beat at that point. And then the Tressel first win, I was actually out of state working at another group for a few years in television. But I remember watching that one, and there was a huge turnaround as I was heavily involved with the Ohio State University Alumni Association Dallas chapter as I was there, and just really talking to a lot of people about the excitement and how things kind of changed and how outlooks changed. But even with that first win, I don't think people had the run up, because, as you said, it was a 6-4 team, I think, going into that game. I think that I think that this is much more akin to going into 12 with Urban Meyer being named and all of this. I think there was a lot more directed hopes and dreams and whatever. I mean, yes, Jim Tressel delivered a pretty speech on the floor of the basketball arena saying in 310 days and everything else, but nobody knew. He was a successful coach at Youngstown State. I mean, the concept worked in 1AA at that. I mean, I think it was still called 1AA at that point, but we didn't know. But Urban Meyer, everybody had seen firsthand what he was capable of doing with a good team. I'm not going to talk about that Fiesta Bowl all that much in the BCS, but that one went on to ring true with hoisting of a trophy in 2014, and a lot of people still really angry that there was not an opportunity for that 2012 team to show what it could do in the postseason. But fast forward back to today, I think that people are going to be excited with what this team is moving into, especially as Michigan is seeing more and more of its players opting to go to the NFL draft. I mean, they had such a glut of players between guys that were exhausting their eligibility or guys who legitimately had their own NFL decisions. I think that the balance of power is going to be righted, on the fields here in Columbus in 300 and however many days, as Tom said at the beginning of the show, and there will be punch and pie for all.
320 days, and Jim Tressel's speech was 310 days, so we're almost to the Jim Tressel-versary. I think that was January 18th of 2001, I believe. So yeah, we're almost there to the 23rd anniversary of that speech. Goodness, we are all getting old. But yes, certainly things seem like they're trending up in Columbus right now. And as Kevin sort of mentioned very briefly at the beginning, recruiting things are looking pretty darn good for the Buckeyes too. Could have some more positive recruiting news for Ohio State coming up this week. You're going to want to be at BuckeyeHuddle.com to keep up with all of that. We've got plenty of conversations about where the direction of the offensive coordinator search, where that might be headed. Plenty of conversations about some of the recruitments that could be coming to a close in Ohio State's favor in the coming days and weeks. Lots of stuff about the team as well. There's a lot of stuff to talk about right now at BuckeyeHuddle.com, and we would love to have you there to talk about it with all of us. As we've said before, membership there, the price of a lousy chain store pizza. So, and actually probably with tax and tip and delivery, you're probably well under the price of a lousy chain store pizza at this point. So why don't you give us a lay off the pizza for a little in January and join us at BuckeyeHuddle.com instead. There's a lot of stuff to talk about. We would love to see you there. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow.